Welcome to the Talks of the Times. I'm Sheila Molyneux. I'm a member here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Just to give you a few pointers about the room, the exits are, of course, where you came in, and at the down the hall there is, and to your right there is an exit to the street. And on the way, you would be passing 2 bathrooms, so if that's where you would go for that. Please feel free afterwards to join us for refreshments that are already enticingly set up back there. And I'm going to turn this over to Judy Murphy, who will introduce Jack for you.
Thank you, Sheila. Today's program is co-sponsored by the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Bennington and the Bennington branch of the American Association of University Women. Our speaker is Jack Rossiter Munley, who has been actively working on social justice issues in our community for some time. He returned to Bennington to be with his family during the COVID lockdown. And we're fortunate that he stayed and got active in a number of community issues. Jack has a master's degree in journalism from Columbia University and 2 degrees from Marlborough College in cultural history and international relations. He has helped to start the Justice Reading and Action Group, which discusses readings about social issues, and in response to news articles about the frequency with which Bennington police are called to the elementary schools in Bennington, Jack helped to form a new citizen advocacy group called Bennington Cares, which provides community support to students, parents, and teachers at the elementary schools. He is co-founder of the Bennington Community Cafe, and I could go on and on. More to the point of today's talk, Jack has tutored refugees. He is now case manager and interim office lead with the Ethiopian Community Development Council, ECDC. The agency is tasked by the U.S. State Department to resettle refugees in southwestern Vermont. Today he will discuss refugee resettlement in our community, and I'm pleased to see he's here with his guitar and will be treating us to some songs also. Jack Rossiter Munley.
Judy, and thank you very much to the UU and to AAUW for hosting this. I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm really pleased to be here, and I am very pleased to be talking about refugee resettlement here in Bennington because it is a really exciting development for the community, and I'm glad to be working on it, and I'm really glad to be sharing more about it. So I wanted to start off with talking a little bit about how I got involved in the first place. Because as Judy said, my professional background isn't really in refugee resettlement, it's not in case management, it's not in social work. I went to school for my professional degree as a journalist. And I was working as a freelancer here in Bennington when I started tutoring some of the refugees who've already resettled in the area. But my connection to refugee resettlement, I realized, actually started quite a while ago. And when you sort of begin a new chapter, you can sometimes trace back and start to see the seeds that were planted earlier on. So there may be moments I don't remember that are earlier than this, but I think the earliest I remember is in 2005, I was part of a theater production in Chicago. And it was a really cool collaborative theater project where middle schoolers were mentored by and high schoolers, I was in high school. Were mentored by professional theater people and storytellers. And I was working with a really cool guy. We were working on a story about Mount Everest, but one of the things that we had to do was we each picked a song to go on the little sort of hype-up soundtrack that we would all listen to when we got together to do rehearsals or little loosening up games before our performances. And the song that my mentor Nick picked was a song called Start Wearing Purple. And it was written by a guy named Eugene Hutz, who it turns out came here as a refugee in the 80s from Ukraine. And because of that song, I discovered the band that he started, and it became a really big part of my musical development because, yes, he was a refugee from Ukraine, but the idea behind the band is that he blended the Ukrainian folk music that he grew up with the rock and roll and punk music that he found here in the United States, and created this really interesting international blend that included cultures from around the world and had Western influences. This became a big influence on me, and it continued to be a musical influence, but it also became sort of a personal influence because he's this guy who's very sort of, he's got a lot of ideas, let's say, and he gives these really compelling introductions to songs. And in early 2017, this is pretty literally around the time that refugees coming into the United States were being turned away at airports. You may remember that very dramatic interlude. I happened across a performance of his, a song he'd recently written, and the way that he described the idea behind the song is that we often put a lot of pressure on ourselves. Whenever it's a crossroads in your life or you have a major decision to make, we are very good at creating a lot of external ideas about what we feel we should be doing, and that noise crowds out what he described as a pretty incredible mechanism within us to understand kind of where we need to go, what we need to do, and that in a lot of instances, we just need to get out of the way. We need to get out of our own way. And so as I was working with tutoring refugees in the summer of 2022, and I was continuing to freelance as a journalist, and an opportunity came up to work in refugee resettlement, I was at a point where I had to set aside some of my preconceived notions about what I felt like I was supposed to be doing with this professional degree that I put a bunch of time and perhaps, yes, a bunch of money into acquiring. And really realizing that what I was enjoying the most was the time that I was spending working on English language classes or practicing for a driver's test with refugees, and the fact that there was an opportunity to work on that full time, I had to get out of my own way and say, yes, I will do this. And so I did. And that is how I began working for ECDC. So we will get into what ECDC stands for and why it is that way in a little bit. But before we do, I also want to set a little bit of background of what it really means to be a refugee, because there is a specific meaning associated with it, and it is someone who has been forced to flee their country because of war or violence. And I wrote down the different requirements because there are international definitions around this. It is because they can fear under the basis of race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. So that's kind of the beginning point in terms of getting a refugee status. There is then a massive international operation that goes into doing medical screenings and background interviews. One important thing to understand about the refugee process is that there is a whole lot that goes on before anyone ever even comes to the United States. And it is a really intensive multi-step, and often for many people, multi-year process before they ever come to this country. That being said, refugees do come to the United States, and more specifically, they come to Vermont. Refugees have been resettling in Vermont for about 40 years, but that has mostly been happening in the northern part of the state. Vermont's proud history of being a welcoming state towards refugees actually extends even farther back. Some of you may know that Grace Coolidge, the wife of our 30th president, Calvin Coolidge, was born up in Burlington. And in the 1930s, she advocated for finding as many ways possible to bring refugees from Germany, Jewish refugees, to the United States. So there is a really long history in Vermont around being welcoming to refugees. Starting in 2022, ECDC, which is the Ethiopian Community Development Council, and I'll tell you right now two things. One, that name does not help you understand what ECDC does. And also, because ECDC is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year, as of July, those letters will no longer stand for Ethiopian Community Development Council. So you've got a bunch of great, soon-to-be out-of-date news. The ECDC is one of a number of nonprofit organizations that work across the country, geographically divided up, who work on refugee resettlement. They're all contracted with the State Department, and they are then accountable to the State Department for the resettlement process. And ECDC is the organization that operates here in southern Vermont. That work began in January of 2022 in response to the emergency evacuations that were coming out of Afghanistan. And many of the folks who went through that emergency evacuation process have had a little bit of a different experience than folks who travel through a more traditional resettlement process. So ECDC in southern Vermont, based out of Brattleboro, starts in January of 2022. In October of 2022, Bennington was designated as a refugee resettlement site. And in February of this year, the ECDC office here in Bennington opened. Since October of 2022, I want to give huge, massive credit to Megan Winslow, who is our, Judy mentioned I'm the interim office lead. Megan is our office lead, and she did incredible groundwork before there was ever an office here as a one-person operation for many, many months, doing incredible case management work, and also laying the groundwork to open up this office. So we opened in February of 2023, and now in the near future, we are hoping to begin having arrivals here to Bennington. Currently, there are 32 people, all from Afghanistan, who have been resettled here in Bennington, and we have more projected arrivals this year. We have not had people coming for a little while we get the office sort of set up and running, as we hire for the office, but there will be more people coming to Bennington, which is very exciting, because fundamentally what refugee resettlement is a massive opportunity. It's a chance for a community to welcome new people into the beauty of southern Vermont, and the people who come through refugee resettlement bring with them vast experiences and skills that are a huge benefit to a community. This is something that we've already started to see in both Bennington and Brattleboro, is the ways that the gifts, talents, skills, and knowledge of refugees enhance and enrich the communities in which they resettle. We have people across southern Vermont who have resettled who have backgrounds in carpentry, journalism, artists, lawyers, tailors, cooks, bakers, so many different abilities that are now here in our communities. Now, as you might imagine, with all of those skills and abilities and talents come a number of challenges. I'm sure you can guess that some of them are, but there's obviously a background that often includes trauma. The refugee experience is almost by definition one that involves a level of trauma. And certainly beyond any direct trauma that someone may have experienced, there is the trauma of having your entire life uprooted and having to build a new one in a new country. There is also, of course, for many folks, a challenge around language. Here we have an Afghan population. The native language in Afghanistan for all of the folks who are currently here is Dari, and many people are learning English or came with some level of English ability. But there are also people who are pre-literate in English, and even some who were pre-literate in Dari, which presents a whole other host of challenges for accessing employment and for just living in a country where so much of what we do operates on being able to read and write and function in English. Another challenge can be around cultural adjustment and cultural expectations. Within the Afghan community that we have right now, there are certain cultural expectations perhaps around women and working that can be challenging if you're trying to make a life in the United States, where a lot of the way the economy operates is based on the idea of having two earners in a household if you have a young family. So those are some of the challenges that come along with the skills, and part of what our job is at ECDC is to function as a way to bridge those challenges so that the skills can be accessed. And that's also where communities come in. communities that are willing to really think creatively about how to help people move beyond the challenges that they might come with so that the skills they come with can be accessed and can benefit all. There are also, if you come and live in southern Vermont, there are huge benefits. There's the natural beauty, there's a wonderfully caring community that has come together to help with the resettlement process, but there are also challenges that present themselves here. There are a number of challenges in rural resettlement specifically, which is what the project here really is. There are challenges around transportation. If you are resettling in a city with strong public transit, yes, it's hard to learn how to use it, but when you don't even have public transit as an option, until somebody can actually get a driver's license or afford a car, thinking really creatively about how to expand transit access or how to find other means of transportation becomes a really important thing to focus on. As I'm sure all of you are aware, a major challenge that we have here in this area for everyone, not just refugees, is housing. Finding homes for everyone is incredibly difficult. That's another challenge that presents itself in the work that we do here. And it's also finding employers in the community. As I mentioned, there are many people coming with many wonderful skills that directly line up with some of the work that needs to get done, but it's working with employers to understand how they can help somebody who maybe doesn't have strong English yet, but is able to learn it on the job, or is able to access it through classes that can fit around a work schedule. It's being able to think, again, really creatively about how you match the skills with the right fit, and then bridge across the challenges. One other challenge that I'm happy to say, I think a lot of folks have been really proactive in pushing back against is the potential for xenophobic reactions to having folks from other cultures, other nationalities, other backgrounds coming to an area. And this is, again, as with the other areas, it is where the community is of such importance, because being able to notice, acknowledge, and immediately push back any xenophobic reactions to the resettlement process is incredibly important. It is essential for those who come here to feel comfortable, confident, and begin adjusting to life in the United States. It can't happen unless there is really strong community support and a strong community reaction to any negative pushback. And so what we do at ECDC is we work with people, we work with employers, we build community partnerships, we build relationships, we work with the individuals who come here through resettlement, and we help people find housing, we help people find employment, and we do all of this work. But it's not possible without the community. And Grace Winslow is here. I'd like to specifically mention her, and Bennington County Open Arms, which is the volunteer group. Yes, please. So I gave you a little sense of the timeline for ECDC here in Bennington. You will notice that there wasn't a lot of ECDC presence for a lot of time, and maybe it would be fair to say still isn't. I mean, I'm a one-person operation right now while Megan is on maternity leave. She will be back. We're building our office here, but so much of the resettlement work that has happened so far here in Bennington has been done by Bennington County Open Arms, who have gone above and beyond as volunteers, doing all of the work that I'm describing, finding jobs, finding houses, helping access language learning opportunities, functioning as conversation partners, really doing a lot of the wonderful work. There's a medical, yes, helping people access the healthcare systems, helping people navigate the healthcare system, helping people understand how to use their medications appropriately, following up on medical needs, a huge part of the work that is ongoing, because I think all of us probably wish that we had someone who could help decode and demystify the medical system for us. Now imagine that you're doing it in a language you've never known, in an alphabet that isn't your own. I mean, the challenges are so numerous. Health is a great example, and it's sort of illustrative because you're given a medication by your doctor. Even in English, it might have a name that's hard to understand. There's your starting point. But you're also supposed to take it at certain times and in certain ways and in certain relationships to food. But also, you're pre-literate in both English and your own language. So how are you going to keep track of that in a reliable way? without really intensive support, without a really strong volunteer core to help make that happen, it won't. And that not only negatively impacts the health of the individual, but it can then negatively impact how they're able to function at work. It can then negatively impact the amount to which they're able to involve themselves in the rest of the community. So, and you can make these kinds of connections out of any one of those small areas that I talked about. With the same with housing. If you're constantly worried that you're going to lose your housing, that changes the total equation for you. So you become very focused on, maybe you were ready to start some sort of schooling, but actually you need to use that time to make money to pay for your house. These different parts all sort of interconnect. And it's really important to be thinking holistically as a community, and for us as a refugee resettlement agency, about how we bring as many different partners together as possible. So I mentioned obviously that we have Bennington County Open Arms as one of our partners. We are always looking for more people who are interested in forming what we call co-sponsorship groups. And those are groups that form, they come together around a family that might be arriving here, and they create a formal relationship with us at ECDC. There's a certain number of people that come together. I'm happy to talk with anybody about the details of what goes into being a co-sponsorship group. But they do a whole bunch of volunteer support around the case management that we do to help folks build their lives here in Vermont. We're also always looking for volunteers who can support in other ways, and we're always looking for community connections. If you know someone who has a room for rent or has apartments that they know of, if you have somebody who is looking for an employee and is willing to think creatively about how a refugee might fit well into that employment opportunity, we are always open to hearing about any possibilities that arise. That's the kind of community connection work that we're doing. And we've started building relationships with a lot of different individuals and also with organizations locally. Obviously, we have a very close relationship with a lot of the state services. When many people come here, that is one of the first stops, is to get signed up for all of the state benefits. And we work closely with the Department of Labor for employment opportunities. We also have worked on trying to expand opportunities within the community so that people have more to do than just the basics of, finding a job, finding a house. We've also been working really closely with the library. We just had an event there yesterday that was wonderfully successful. It included an event for understanding and learning more about Afghan culture, and also hearing some of the really great stories that have come out of resettlement, some of the relationships that have been built, which is the other part of what's so exciting about this process, is that people get to meet each other and learn about their lives and really share. And so that was a really wonderful event. And then we also had activities for kids. And it was a chance not only for the community to learn more about the experience the refugees are having here, but it was also a chance for people in the refugee community to come to the library. Some people who hadn't really come there very much before were able to come, experience the benefits of being in the library, and hopefully create a connection there where they'll be able to access it again in the future. So the library has been a really wonderful partner, and we're working on them with having more programs and more opportunities available in the future. Also, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship here, Second Congregational Church, St. Peter's, have been wonderful partners helping support. Second Congregational was the site of the English language classes initially. St. Peter's is currently where the ECDC temporary office space is housed. You can come by and say hi. We have some limited hours. And the UU stepped up and was one of the partners on a recent community celebration for the holiday of Eid that comes at the end of the month of Ramadan. We've also been creating a new partnership with Bennington College, and they helped come together and organize an event during Ramadan as an iftar, which is for the evening breaking of the fast. And so that was a really wonderful chance to bring many people from the refugee community up to the college, and also for the Muslim students at the college to begin to have a way to share with the refugee community here. So there are a lot of different opportunities that present themselves through refugee resettlement. We are working at ECDC on expanding what we were able to do here in Bennington by hiring more people for our Bennington office. We are currently an office of 2 and hoping to become an office of 4. So if you know anybody who's interested in being a case manager, who's interested in being more involved with the refugee resettlement process here in Bennington, please let me know. I have a sign-in sheet over by the door, so please share your information there. And I will also be giving out my information. We are also working hard, as I said, to bring more volunteers and co-sponsors into the fold. So if any of you directly are interested in that, or if you know anyone who would be interested in it, please let me know. Because we have a number of people who are here already, but as I said, there are going to be more people arriving through the refugee resettlement process. So lots of exciting opportunities for individuals and also for our community. Another partnership that I feel like I should really mention is with the school district. They have hired one of the new arrivals here in Bennington to be an interpreter and to help, because there are many children in the refugee community and there will continue to be. They have hired someone to be an interpreter and translator for the schools, and he has been doing work not only helping the families better connect with the school district, but also working with employees within the school district, helping them to better understand how to connect with families in a community where there isn't necessarily a lot of understanding, not just of the American education system, but of education systems at all, where there isn't really a lot of background in education. So that's been another really exciting and positive development from our process here in Bennington, and we're hoping to help build and nurture that connection over time as well. So what is needed? I think I've outlined some of what's needed, but on the very basic level, some of what's needed is friendly faces in the community who are familiar with what's happening, who understand the refugee resettlement process and are able to share verifiable and reliable information about it, and also connect with folks who are new to Bennington, new to the United States, and who are trying to build new lives here in a new country where a whole lot is really very different. People who are coming here because of these kind of major structural international events. And it can be really hard to understand and to wrap our heads around and to feel like we can do anything when we hear about those kinds of events on the news. I know I feel that way. When you hear about something as massive and as far away as the emergency evacuations in Afghanistan, you see the images on a news report or you read about it in the newspaper, and it is hard to understand and feel that you can do anything to directly impact it. But right now, and in the coming years, there will be something to do about it here in Bennington. And this refugee resettlement process, in addition to all of the specifics that I've outlined on a major kind of conceptual level, is a way for people in the community of Bennington to take a stand against global challenges and global injustices, and on a person-to-person level, make a difference. And to do our small part here in southern Vermont to push back against some of those really dark and challenging things that we hear about. It is a chance to build new relationships, it's a chance to build a stronger community, and it's a chance to bring a whole lot of what the world has to offer here to Bennington, and it is just a little bit of what Bennington can also then offer back to the world. So thank you very much for hearing this, and I want to make sure to save time for questions. Yes.
Jeff, how are the families selected to come here? How did these 32 people, how did they arrive here?
It's a great question. So that gets into sort of how the process of resettlement generally works. There are, as I said, these different agencies, and so what will happen is on the big State Department end, a case will come into the State Department. They will find a match at an agency. That agency will find the office that they are going to allocate, is the word. There's allocations and assurances, great technical terms. They will allocate the case to an office. That office will then look at their community, will look at what their capabilities are, and they will then assure the case, and those folks will come in. It looked a little bit different than this for some of the emergency evacuation that was done around Afghanistan, but that's the usual process of how someone would come to Bennington. So this could be somebody who was in, we don't know, is the other part. We don't know specifically who will come at any given time. There is a sort of procedure, as I said, but there's also an element of uncertainty all the time. But it could be someone who's been in a refugee camp for a number of years, and then their case finally kind of moves through this quasi-glacial international process, and then would come here. Yeah, the families who are here right now were all in some way connected to the American mission in Afghanistan. And that is the reason I mentioned what the international designations are for being a refugee. They are all here because they gave, in many instances, I mean, decades of service to the US mission in Afghanistan. And it is expected that many of the folks who are soon to come are also going to be Afghan and likely have a similar relationship. Some of what's also going on right now is work on family reunification. So the people who are here, many of them still have family members who are in Afghanistan, and some who have specific close minor family members in Afghanistan, who they are hoping to be reunited with as soon as humanly possible. And we're hoping that they will very soon come to Bennington. Yes?
Where are they staying? In a variety of host homes, or what kinds of circumstances?
They are all living in their own homes and apartments.
That you find they've got their own homes?
Yes.
How, do they have funding? Their personal funding?
For the people who are here right now, they're all working.
Oh.
For part of what has made the housing picture as possible right now is that we've had the emergency rental assistance in place here in Vermont, and that has been hugely helpful. So part of the situation that we are going to be facing is that the emergency rental assistance will be going away. Many of the families here will have to figure out how they're going to budget for the rent at their current homes and whether or not they'll have to move. But also for any new arrivals, we will have to understand how quickly they'll be able to get connected to employment, what the affordability of any housing that we find will be. In addition to the challenge of finding housing, it's the challenge of finding affordable housing. And then also working on leveraging the cash support that refugees come with to figure out how long that will last to support rent. And then also reaching out to the community and understanding what kind of private fundraising can be done to provide emergency rental assistance or other kinds of emergency funding assistance. But for the folks who are here now, they're within families and individuals, everybody's employed and everyone's living in their own homes and apartments. And that's the plan for anyone else who will come. Yes?
Hello, I really appreciate your initiative. And I know we have to have a lot more diversity to get people's different perspectives. But I can't help but wonder if we can accept a lot more refugees, because the housing, especially for those of us on the low end of the rental market, are completely squeezed out. And there are a lot of Vermonters who are living in shelters and don't have anywhere to go, and our rent is going up precipitously. Do you think this is the right time to welcome more people to an area that is under considerable economic stress?
Yes. I think it's the right time to think more creatively about how we can expand housing access for everyone here in Vermont, and that includes refugee arrivals. Yes?
When the process goes through and a place is, a location like Bennington is found, does Bennington need to know that there's housing already, or do the people, these refugees, show up, and then you have to, or everybody needs to find them a place to live? How does the timeline of that work?
So there is some flexibility in the timeline, but housing is secured before someone arrives. As I said, there's the allocation of the case to an office. The office will then assure the case, and between the time of the assurance and the person's arrival, there are usually several weeks. And in that time, housing is identified, volunteer supports or co-sponsorship is identified, and there's a whole checklist from the State Department about what must be in place ahead of someone's arrival. Someone from ECDC will then meet that person at the airport and bring them to their home. We also provide a culturally appropriate warm meal upon arrival, and volunteers, again, one of the sort of State Department requirements is that the home will already be furnished and it will already have at least initial food within it. Because we have to remember that folks who are coming here often with absolutely nothing. Or at the very least, they're coming with whatever they can carry on an international flight. So to get started and to begin the road to building what is essentially an entirely new life here, there has to be some level of sort of getting things started. And that's really where we come in as a resettlement agency, and that's where the volunteer supports come in as well. We have several different programs, which are the programs that cover the first 90 days, which has more intensive case management associated with it, and then a variety of other programs based on need for some continuing service to make sure that people aren't just dropped off a cliff after 3 months, which is not a long time to adjust to living in a new country with a whole new set of cultural and linguistic expectations, especially if you've lived 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years in a completely different situation. The other thing that can be just a really basic adjustment is also the climate. One airport pickup that I did was for a family that had arrived here literally from Eritrea in Africa. They were there, they flew here, picked them up at the airport, and they went to their new home. Not here in Bennington. But one of the major adjustments for them and some of the most frequently asked questions, yes, we were figuring out a whole bunch of different things, but they were asking about winter, basically. And, you know, are we in the middle of winter or are we towards the end of winter? How long is it like this? And is this typical winter? Does it get colder than this? Like, what's going on here? And so that's a whole other element of, again, just the vast newness of everything. Even if you have a familiarity with American culture, even if you've seen American TV shows, even if you speak English, it is so different to actually be in a place where you are starting a new life. Yes?
Can I have your email address to contact you?
Yes. I will give my email address. It is jrossitermunley@ecdcus.org.
Jack, is there a central clearinghouse or plans for one of this is what we need, you know, that people could go to, we the community could go to and look for things that we could provide?
There, in time, yes. There has been something sort of like that available in Brattleboro, and we have been able to make some use of that, and there is also hopes of securing space for something like that here. So if any of you know a place that could be used as a central clearinghouse, exactly as was described, that would be amazing, and we would absolutely love to have it. It would greatly speed up our ability to have that available, because that would be a huge resource.
Well, I'm thinking even of as a website where things could be listed that you need, and if you have this, call this, if you need, you know, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Our challenge is having a place to store things, because really we want to be able to prepare for more than one arrival. So ECDC does have a website, and we have a Facebook page for here in Southern Vermont, and we will curate. Please leave your names and email addresses, because we would like to be able to put those kinds of calls out to as many direct people as possible. We can always reach out to organizations or a contact person at a particular place, but the more individuals we can reach out to who may be able to provide one element of a list of needed items, the better.
BCOA actually maintains a list of items that are in the community that we can't accept because we don't have storage space. But if you have something that you would like to donate, you can let Jack know, and Jack can let me know, and we'll just stick it on the list. But please hold on to it.
Yes.
I was thinking not even of tangible things as much as, not true, but I used to teach English as a second language, you know, those kinds of skills or
Any of those skills, send an email to me.
Also,
Yes.
we have access as a community to the skill sets that the arriving people have that we can try and piece together.
Anyone interested in possibly employing someone from the refugee community, again, I'm the person to contact.
On that same note, what I would like as a resident of the community is to connect with music. Do your people have those talents? Because the Turkish Afghanistan music is really jumpy. It's great.
It's wonderful, yeah. I have talked with several members of our community about music, and they've shared different stuff, sometimes even province-specific folk music from Afghanistan. We have not had any music-specific events, and I don't believe in our current population we have musicians, but we do have people who love to listen to music and know a lot about it, and we are working with Bennington College on finding more ways for that to be a connection piece for folks and to be able to have, again, some of that cultural exchange. There's some people who are interested in learning to play instruments, so also trying to make that connection as well. Yes?
You mentioned vetting and the vetting process. I see on the news where there's 100 to 150,000 people a month crossing our southern border. How could you assure us that this particular group of refugees had been fully vetted before they enter our community?
It's part of the international process of being designated
Now,
as
there is
a
some
refugee in the
international
first place.
process. When they cross the border, they're being distributed throughout the country.
You're talking about something completely different.
What's the difference?
They get deported.
If you are coming to the United States through the international refugee resettlement process, you are going through an official process that is monitored by the United Nations, the US State Department, and 10 different nonprofit organizations that are then accountable to the State Department. So it is an official international process that has nothing to do with what you're describing.
Oh, okay. You answered my question. That's
Yep.
what I wanted to know.